Okay, welcome back. This is the new updated for version 4 Millumin 101 video, as we like to call it. So the original was done in 2016, at least according to my records, which was version 2, maybe version 3 had just come out of Millumin, and after many people have viewed it and now getting to be a few years old, we're up to version 4, and there's a beta for version 5. So I was asked to do a new version, and there's definitely some differences. So that's what we're here for. And in case you hadn't seen the original or was aware of why this video exists, this is a basic 101. This will show you the interface and get you up and running to be able to do playback on a show. Millumin's very powerful software if you are not aware, and it can do a lot of things. I will point out a lot of advanced features, but I won't necessarily show details on those features. That would be the subject of another video, or of course you can ask questions, and I encourage everybody to comment down in the comment section, ask questions, ask things of each other. Of course I will monitor and answer questions as well. But yeah, the whole reason for this video is to get you familiar with the interface and the software and how to get it set up to actually playback videos on a show. So that's what we're doing here. And so let's get started. I will switch this view over here. Okay, so first thing you'll need, if you don't already have it, is you want to download the Millumin software. We would do that at millumin.com, which is millumin.com, millumin.com, and of course I could be mispronouncing it, but and I apologize, but that's the pronunciation that I and other people have settled on. Could be completely wrong. Millumin.com, and then you can click on the Millumin 4 link and get to this page where you can download. Now, you see Millumin V5 beta here. Feel free to play with the beta, and it could be really cool. I never suggest using betas for show purposes, so I would not suggest, unless you're really adventurous, using that version on a show. But you could definitely check it out and see what features they've added and things like that. But for purposes of what we're doing here, download Millumin 4. Okay, the other link that I want to show you, the other site, so to speak, Millumin Help, help.millumin.com, and there's lots of good stuff, including information on licensing. I'll talk a little bit more about licensing, but that's very important. Tips on choosing a computer, and then also some other stuff, and that will quickly get into advanced. There is general information on getting started and how to do playback and how to set up displays and things. That's the kind of thing that we're going to talk about here and now. And then there's also, you can see under hot topics, other advanced things, remote control being one of them, or capturing a live stream, lots of other stuff. Once you've got the software and you've got it installed on your computer, you want to open up Millumin. You'll see this splash screen when you open it up. You see trial version expired. So until it's licensed, it has the trial version. Please buy a license. All the functions are available in the trial version. However, it puts a watermark on the video. So that's the important thing to know. Watermark on the video in the trial version. You really can't use that for a show. But licensing is very easy, and there are lots of options. You can buy a license for 1 week for a show. You can buy just a full license so you can use it as much as you want. Whatever you need to do based on your budget and that sort of thing. So you open it up, splash screen. Here's a check version, checking for updates. Now, I wouldn't do this once you've already set up a show and you're in the middle of show. But when I'm prepping for a show or when I'm getting started, I'll usually check for updates. It will check for updates and then it will tell you if you are current. You can see here I'm running version 4.18G, and it did get through and say, yes, this is the newest version. Okay. If there's an update, it'll tell you that there's an update and allow you to download and install it. Great. Now over here you see recent projects on the right. If I had been working on projects recently, you would see them and you could click them and open them up. And then over here on the left, you've got some things: create a new project, which is what we're going to do. Learn with tutorials. There are tutorials for various things. I believe that takes you back to the help.millumin.com, but either way, the tutorials are kind of cool if you want to actually see how things are done or see some examples of what other people have done, and submit an idea. And years ago, I actually did submit an idea. This takes you to sort of a community page where there's lots of ways to submit ideas, but you can submit various suggestions you have for the software. And there was a suggestion years ago that I did submit, and they did finally implement it. But they are very responsive at Millumin, which is a great thing. Here we are. You've got the current version, you're downloaded, got the current version, and you're ready to go. So we're going to create a new project. We create a new project, and boom. Here is our interface. You can see trial expired, untitled. That's the name of our project if we had saved it, which we have not yet. But this is the first display that you're going to see. Now, what do we have here? We have the canvas here. The canvas is a real-time preview, and it's also where you can build things, but it's going to be where you see what's going out your displays. Down over here, we have a properties panel, and you have to have something selected to see properties, which is why there's nothing there. You can see here as you roll over, you can resize these, which is great. So there are settings here for the canvas, auto-selecting layers, and showing extra controls when mapped. That's if you've got custom controls. And then up here are various, you do get tool tips. So it tells you what these tools do: manipulating content, map tool, move tool. This gives you different ways to manipulate your content. There's also some tools here for sizing of things and moving some things around. There's an arrow here to open up a panel. Usually when you see arrows like this, you can open up a panel. This is a very important panel. I usually leave it open most of the time when I'm operating. So this is your library. Shows you a lot of things. These are built in, the shaders. These are advanced ways that you would manipulate your content. Programs, again, advanced things kind of like macros. Inputs, right now I don't have any external hardware, but if you had external cameras, you could select those to be in your canvas. And generic, these are screen capture, text, if you want to add text, things like that, browser windows, things like that. So those are just items that are built in. However, this is where you're going to put all the content, basically your videos that you're going to play back. Okay, now down at the bottom, you see here, here's another place. I'm going to resize this, so make this lower part here bigger. So canvas, properties, library or clip list, clips bin, dashboard. Okay, dashboard, very important. This is where you drop your clips, and this is how you play video. We'll go into more detail as we start playing video, but the most important thing to understand is this is not a timeline. You do see here, timeline is something completely different. We'll talk about it. It's advanced. I'm not going to demonstrate it because you're not going to need it until you need it, and I will explain that. Dashboard is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. And here is the thing to understand. This is not a timeline. This is a cue list. You see one, which you can name these things. If you have video dropped in or rename or number, there's some functions of things you can do. But each one of these columns, notice I select this layer here, and it says layer, and now we have properties for the layer. You'll notice that because I clicked on timeline and there's a plus, it added timeline. Now there's a timeline in the clips bin. We are not going to use that timeline, but I wanted you to see what happens when you add a timeline, and you can add more. So you can have multiple timeline windows. Okay, but layer, and you can add layers. So layer 2, and these do work like layers in editing software, in that the one on top in the canvas shows on top of the one below. So if you have a video clip in each layer and they're full screen, the one on top covers the one on the bottom. All right? But each one of these columns is an event. If you were to press play when there is content in this column, that content will play. Everything in that column will play. You notice some controls over here to stop. You can stop each layer independently. But when you press play on a column, you are playing everything in that column. And it will play all the way to the end. You can make it loop. There's a few things you can do like that. But this is not a timeline. I will probably say that again, and it's important to understand, if you've worked in editing software or other types of playback software where you drop a clip into a layer and then you see the clip with time 0 on the left and the beginning of the clip and time whatever on the right at the end of the clip, and it's a continuous stream that you can click into and change the position of the playhead, that is not what this is. This is a group of clips that play at the same time. So that's a really important concept to get. Okay, we'll dive more into that. Next thing to see in the interface here is this window. You can see there's a triangle to open it. This is the time window. This is super important because one of the things that we're always doing is we are looking at time and counting down time and doing that kind of stuff. And there is something important here called cues. You'll see that there's built-in cues. Go to 30, go to 20, go to 10, or minus 30, minus 20, minus 10, and recall buttons. You can add your own cues, but the important thing is when you are saying, oh, they want me to go to 10 seconds out, that there is something that is here that you can use to do that. And we are going to talk about ways that you can use that. There's something they call interactions, which are other ways to program things, but we'll get more into programming these cues later, but know that that's where that is. So when you're playing something, you're going to see time here. We'll demonstrate that. But that's the time panel, so that's super important. Now, some of the other things that are important, there's a help button. You need to be online to get help because it takes you to the help.millumin.com, but that's very important. Interactions, that's programming things. You'll see, look at how things become green and highlighted. This is where you can program things to buttons or external controllers. We're not going to talk about external controllers, but it is possible. Optimize, you will get information here, and particularly if there is a different format of playback, it will tell you, hey, we can optimize performance by converting this video. And if you have problems with video chunking and skipping frames on playback, you can look at Optimize here and it'll give you suggestions, and there's things that you can do. This is a medium advanced, but you want to know about it particularly if you're having trouble with the media that you have. And there's a lot more information on the Millumin help about how to format your video and things like that, and that'll get real advanced. But one thing to know, one of the good things about Millumin is that it will play basically any video that the Mac will play in QuickTime. So if you can play it on the Mac without Millumin, Millumin can play it. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for what you want, and especially if you are going out external hardware. If you are going out the HDMI built in, that's one thing, and that there's a certain level of resolution and frames per second you can get out of the built-in output of the computer that you're using. If you have external interfaces, for instance, something that goes, say, USB-C to DisplayPort or something like that, you're going to get a different level of performance. And so the video that you put in will determine the performance you'll get out. So sometimes Optimize can help you with that. So that's what that's there for. We won't go too deep into that. Now, the most important thing up here is output. That's the general tour of what's going on. There's already a lot in there, okay? I'm going to now dive deeper into things, but at this point, okay, you've seen most of what you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis to play video. You have started up the interface. There are menu options up here, particularly licensing settings, checking for updates and things, but you have your project here and save as. So just so that you can see that we'll do that once we've set stuff up, okay, we're going to do a save as, and it works just like regular OS save boxes. Save this as demo.millumin. It's in Documents subfolder. Okay, so now it's saved, and you'll see demo.millumin. That shows you what it is. So we've started this up. The first thing that we would do is we would look at our output settings. Okay, now this brings up this whole window here. Looking at what you have canvas, and then you have plus and minus. You can have multiple canvases. You probably aren't going to use that initially, especially when you're just playing back one video to one device. But you can have multiple canvases. These can be different resolutions, even different output devices and things. Millumin can be a very powerful video server if you need to do that kind of stuff. We're not hooked up to any other devices or anything, so when you look on computer, okay, it's showing you this one, meaning that it's the display of this computer that I'm on. If there were other things networked and other devices, you could do other things. Okay, layout, one by one, and then resolution. Okay, this right here is saying that my canvas is set up for a 1x1, meaning the whole canvas is this size. Right now it says 1280 by 720. Most likely you're going to go 1920 by 1080. That's probably the res that you're going to work at. And then down here under one, our 1 of 1, one canvas, one display, it says no display. Okay, built-in retina display. Were I to do that, it's now going to take over this display. Okay, you can do that. Hey, it goes black. What happened? Okay, it took over the display. You can escape out of it. But that's it saying, okay, that's the display that I'm sending video out to. When you have an HDMI plugged into a device that says, say, goes to a switcher or something, you're going to see that HDMI display in this list. If you were to have a multi-display box or plug in, say, multiple USB-C converters to DisplayPort, you would see all those devices, and you could select those devices. You can also see Siphon, which is a networking system. You can see NDI. Okay, I have NDI installed on this computer, so that shows up as a device. I could create an NDI stream. You can also see YouTube streaming. You can create a YouTube stream. Okay, already you can see powerful stuff. We're not going to talk about that. We're talking about playing one video out to an external device. That'll be like a switcher or something like that. All right, so you would select that display. Right now we're using the Retina display, the built-in, which will do some, will demo some things, but not everything. Don't worry about that. Down here you see soft edges, okay? Left and right, top and bottom. One of the things that this can do is it can be a screen blending multiple output device. So for instance, layout 1x1, okay? If I say 2x1, now I have a 2 horizontal by 1 vertical, and again, I've got soft edge blending, blah, blah, blah. I could also say 2x2. Now I could take four 1920 1080s and make this into a 4K 3840 by 2160 and use four different output devices to get four 1920 by 1080s and be 1-to-1, as in go native 4K out to four 1080 inputs on a switcher. And if all of this is starting to get to be too much for you, that's okay. You don't need to do this if all you're doing is playing one video out to one device. But no, that's what this is for, and that's how powerful this is. Okay? Also notice fit button. This will change resolution to fit the output display, and the output of this Mac is not 1920 1080. So I do that, then it'll say, oh, well, this output looks 1728 by 1117. That's not what it actually is, but that's what it thinks. Okay, so we're going to go back manually 1920 1080. That would be normally what you would do. Now, a couple of things. Mac OS preferences, toggle full screen, and display test card. Mac OS preferences literally brings up system settings and displays. Okay, this is where you're going to see, and if you're not familiar with the system settings for Mac for multi-displays and all that, you should get yourself familiar with that, because this is sort of the intermediary between Millumin and the physical outputs. If the Mac does not see the displays correctly and see the resolutions correctly, then you will not be able to get your content output correctly as well. Usually before I even start up Millumin, I will make sure that I have my hardware connected and that things are correct in system settings, and then I will start up Millumin. And this especially applies to audio, that we'll get to later, but I have sort of a saying, and that is do everything outside of Millumin first, all your settings for audio and video, and then start up Millumin. And there's a couple of reasons why. Over the years I found that's the case, more so audio than video, but also with video. So make sure everything physically is set up, and so your system settings are correct, including important things like your color profiles and things. If you have multiple outputs and multiple screens, and video people, projectionists, engineers are telling you that you are putting out different colors, well, it's possible if you have different display profiles or the wrong ones for the display that you're using, that things will be incorrect. One thing that I will mention, so you'll see HDTV BT709, that's very common. NTSC, you're probably not going to use that anymore. So there's built-in color profiles, and then built-in color profiles for the displays, this being an Apple display in that. And then you can also do calibration and customization of presets. If you don't know about this stuff, this is not the place where we're going to learn about it, but you will probably want to learn about it, because eventually you will find in more advanced things where you have color profiles that don't match, and you need to deal with that. So you can get directly to system settings from inside Millumin. Okay. Most important thing though, display test card. Okay, watch what happens when I do that. I do display test card, and then look at that. Here is a simulation of the output, and this shows the test card. And I will show you two things about that. First of all, we're going to say OK, then we're going to go back here. Now, in our canvas, and we are going to size, I pressed this little frame button here, and that says show me the entire canvas. Here we are seeing the test card in the canvas, full screen 1920 1080, full res, and it says built-in retina display. That's the display that we are spitting out to. Notice, however, in addition to the square hatching here, which is a typical test pattern, notice these diagonal cross hatches. This is the watermark that the trial version, once it's expired, displays. Okay, that's why you see this. If you are licensed, you will not see that. That is what makes, that's what shows you that you're using a trial version that has expired, is there is this crosshatch. So in all our demos, in this video, we are going to see this crosshatch if I put anything up, And that's because it's the trial version. So when you see that, you know you have an unlicensed version. Of course, it should say trial expired there as well. But that's what that is. You still have all the functions available, and you'll see when I drop in video and stuff that we do in fact have all of the functions available. But this test card, this goes edge to edge at full res with color. This is going to allow you to make sure that your output going to a switcher and then going out to projection or LED is getting all the pixels. There is a 1 pixel width, I believe it's 1 pixel width frame, so you know that if you're seeing this frame and then you see here it's not here on these gray edges, so you'll know if you're seeing all of this content and you're seeing this shape and everything that you are getting out to the destination. So if somebody tells you there's a problem with your output and you put this test card up and see this, and then you look at the output and see that things are cut off, or things are egg-shaped, not circular, or things are rectangular or not square, then you know that in the converter, perhaps to DisplayPort or SDI or something, or the input to the switcher, it's seeing the video incorrect. Also, with multi-display outputs, or if you have, say, prime and backup machines, you can also see which one, and you can go into your output settings and you can say, okay, we're going to turn off the test card on this one, so primary is showing black. Okay, great. And then you can say, okay, now I'm going to put up, let's say I was on the backup, I'll say, you should see a test pattern on the backup. Do you see the test pattern? Great, okay, that's how you can use that. So, display test card, which is in the window that comes up in your output settings. This is going to be the first thing you do. We haven't loaded any video into our clips bin or anything yet. We are just setting up the output of the software to our device. Set our resolution, chosen the output device, and then we use the test card to make sure it's working. Last thing I'm going to talk about here is mapping, which takes you to another window. This is where you can do extremely complicated video server things with projection mapping and all kinds of other surface warping and things like that. We're not going to talk about any of that here, but it is possible, and that's what that's for. So now we're going to go back to layout, which is the main window, the only window that you're going to need to get yourself going. Think about everything that we have reviewed here, because this is a spot where you want to understand what we've been talking about. I will go back to a few things, but if you're not sure about your output window and setting up outputs, go back and review that. And if you still are having trouble, then post a comment or ask a question or look in help. Go to the various communities, because everything builds on what I just showed you. Now we've set up our outputs and we're ready to start bringing in media and then going through the functions of playing back and setting up shows and that sort of stuff. And the easiest way to get your content into Millumin is go out here into the Finder and grab it and drag it into this clips bin. So I'm going to grab a couple of clips that I've got on my computer. You can see these are MP4s, okay? I believe they're encoded H.264, and that's one of the things that QuickTime can play. I'd suggest that you use ProRes. A lot of people use HAP, although I believe that has more compression than ProRes. I think for the kind of shows that we do, you need to be working in ProRes, which has about a 5:1 compression, or uncompressed. Uncompressed, which could be animation codec, or could be just a uncompressed SDI, HD type of video. That's going to look the best on a 60-foot or larger screen, and also with the kind of processing that we do. I'm not going to go into all the deep details of why, and that is also somewhat of a religious discussion, because people can get into their favorite codec and why the codec that they don't like sucks. I don't really care about that. What I can tell you is I've done dozens, if not hundreds, of shows over many years with ProRes, and it looks great on screen, and producers and audiences love it. So take that for what it's worth, and then use what works for you. Okay, these are H.264s, fairly compressed. They are not going to look good on a big screen, but they are going to do what we need to do. Okay, so now you have this content in your system, and you can bring it into your dashboard for playback. By the way, one thing that I will mention is I always advocate playing back off of external drives, particularly SSDs. This computer has an SSD in it. This is a MacBook Pro laptop. You can play 1920, 1080 videos with even in ProRes, you can usually play off of the internal drive. In the old days with spinning drives, that was not so much the case, so your mileage may vary depending on your machine, but there's other reasons for using external drives as well, having to do with backup and the ease of moving things around. And lastly, it used to be you never wanted to play video off of a drive that the system was on. With SSDs and modern systems, that's not such a big deal, but it still could come up. So usually I would advocate for an external drive or a secondary internal drive, not the one that the operating system is on. So that's a little tip there. All right, so we have our content in here. And so let's go back to having just set this up. So I'm going to highlight this layer 2, which has no content in it, and we don't really need it. And I'm just going to hit the delete key on the keyboard. And now there are some also menu things you can do, delete, etc. I like to use keyboard shortcuts, so those are good to learn. So I've deleted the extra layer that we had. So now we just have this one layer. So if we're going to play this video back, we've already set up our canvas, our outputs, and everything, so we can just drag this video down to this first column here. Now, if we click on the clip in the column,
all right.
Okay, we see that it starts playing. We hear the lovely audio in the background, and we see that we have the crosshatch, that this is a demo version. Now, over here on the right, you see pause, so I'm going to pause. If we stop, this is normal behavior. If we stop, it blacks out the screen. So start playing and pause and look at a few things. Here in our time panel, we see that we have time remaining. You also see there's a little waveform that shows the audio. You see a preview of the clip here, but also look as we click. Notice how this is shaded light and this is shaded dark. Okay, and notice we are cueing through the clip. All right, remember I said the important thing to learn here is that this dashboard is not a timeline. This is a sequence of cues, Q1, Q2, Q3, and this over here in the time panel is a timeline. You can click through it and it shows you time remaining and stuff. Now, you can change that to turning off the counter, time elapsed, and time remaining with this gear. Usually any of these gears that you see, they're going to give you some kind of options in addition to properties, all right? So you can change what you see here. Also, notice on the right here, time remaining, size changes as you resize this. And then when you get way down to the end here, if I can click here easily, I'll just start playing again, and I'll talk over myself talking. And you see you get down to the 10 seconds, and then when you're in the last 10 seconds, it gives you this red. So, point being here, I always resize when I'm setting up my show so that I get this large. I make this whatever size I need to make the time panel, so I get the large countdown window here. I like that. Some people want to have more space here in their dashboard, and they're not so concerned with the countdown, but I like the large countdown, and that's how you change the sizes, by dragging that panel. That's an important thing. Now, I will show you, I talked about the layers. Let's go back and add layer 2 here, and now I'm going to take another clip out of the clip spin and drop it in here, and now I'm going to click on this. Okay, notice two things. I'm going to press pause. Up here in the time window to pause both clips because you can play them independently. And that's an important thing to know. Okay? You can play them independently of each other when you are on that group of clips. Okay, so that's why this is not a timeline in the dashboard, because each clip can be played independently and you can do different things. Also notice here, the resolution of this clip, this H.264 is like, I don't know, half res or something of full 1920 1080 that's here in the background. Okay, and this allows you to do some important things, which we will get to when we talk about properties. But main thing to understand is that you've got multiple clips here, and the one on the top layer is showing on top of the one on the bottom layer. Were I to click on the layer and drag it and reorder these layers, now layer, which we could number layer 1 by double clicking and adding text. Layer 1 is now on top of layer 2. Here's layer 1. Layer 2, because it's smaller and underneath, is now invisible. If we were to continue playing layer 2, there's the audio. We can click through it, but we can't see it because it's hidden. Although, because we have selected this layer, notice how there's a frame here. And yes, it's a little hard to see the frame, okay, because we have the cross-hatching and that, but it is there. These are a stack of cues. So I'm going to press stop here to stop everything, and then I'm going to press play at the top of this column.
Bring it on. Let's bring in the other.
It starts all the clips all together, plays everything until they get to the end of that clip, and this clip on the top keeps going. All right, going to pause that. Okay, so you can see there's a lot going on here, but to reiterate, this is the important part. Group of clips all play together, and there's another important thing, which I will show you. We'll put a clip in the second column here, and that is, notice how we're selected on this column. Press pause, okay. We're selected on this column. If we are to hit the space bar on the keyboard, it goes to the next column and plays. Okay? That is very important because that is how you can trigger your cues in a show. So you can click and play the column.
Is this thing on?
When they get to the end, when they get to the end, they would stop. They would go to black if that's the behavior that you had set up. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then you could hit the space bar when the stage manager says go, and go to the next group of cues and play those. And you can keep hitting the space bar and going through your show that way, and use that to play your entire show once you're set up. Okay, so that's an important thing to understand. There's multiple ways to skin the cat, and there's a way you can operate. I like that because sometimes clicking on things, maybe you click in the wrong space or whatever, or you're clicking quickly and maybe you wanted to click column 1 but you accidentally clicked column 2. Okay, if you are operating by just clicking the space bar every time you get a go, then you're going to just go to the next. Okay, so that's why that's an important thing to know and to use. Another thing you can do if you're clicking, so we're playing this first column, you can click on this advance button here. It does the same thing. All right, so more than one way to skin the cat. We have set up our environment, we have added clips, we have put clips into our show, and we've set up our time window so we can do countdowns and we can play clips. Okay, so pretty much we can do a show now. There's a few other things that I want to show you, but at this point you know what you need to know. And there's a lot of extra stuff here, so clicking on it don't get lost, but just know there's a lot of extra stuff here that you don't need in order to play a show. Let's talk about other things that you commonly need to do, and one of them I already alluded to, and that has to do with time. So we'll look at time. So play, let's just pause this, but we're playing this video, and the stage manager says go to the last 10. Okay, we can click cues and click recall, go to 10, and then boom. It takes our playing clip to 10, or we can say go to 30. Our clip that's not playing doesn't, it's only a 10-second clip, so you can see it took it as far back as it could go. Or we can recall, go to 20, and you get that there. All right, so cues will be what you use if you're in rehearsal and you're cue to cue, and okay, great, playing that clip, and now play this clip. Okay,
is this thing on?
That's only 10 seconds. Play this clip. Okay, go to the last 10. Okay, great. Goes to the last 10 of both clips because they're playing, and then plays them out. 2, 1, and out, and there you go. So that's how you're rehearsing. Now, if you wanted to, you could do some cool things. Now, I've talked about how you can use this panel to recall these cues, but here's something really cool. This is about one of the most advanced things that we're going to look at here. You'll probably want to do this. I do this all the time. Up here, interactions. I mentioned this before, and you see how things go green in that. This is where you can map external controls, which would include the keyboard in your laptop, or if you're using a desktop, the keyboard, but your keyboard or other controllers, other things, you could map things to functions. So interactions panel. Now here you can add an interaction, which we're going to say keyboard. Notice MIDI, Open Show Control, DMX, ArtNet. Yes, you can be hooked up to lighting controllers and all kinds of things. Time code, internal signals, lots of advanced things. You don't need to know that now, but it's there. Even that, I believe it's Microsoft Connect, you can hook up to all kinds of things. However, we're going to add a keyboard interaction. All right, over here on the right now, keyboard input. Key. Say I want to map my go to 10, go to 20, and go to 30 to keys 3, 2, and 1, number keys respectively. Okay, so I'll go click key. Notice it says waiting for key. It wants you to tell it what key you're mapping. So now I'm going to click the 3. Notice number 3. Great. Choose an action. Click on that. Notice recall a cue. Cues panel. Recall a cue. Hey, here's the cues that we built. I'm going to map key 3 to go to 10 and then close. That's all I need to do that. So now I'm going to go play this column. I'm going to tap the 3 key, and notice we go to 10. Okay, if I go here and I have 3, recall go to 10, and then I say add another keyboard interaction, 2, choose an action, recall go to 20, and add another keyboard interaction, key, click, key 1, choose an action, recall, go to 30. Now you can see I've got 1, go to 30, 2, go to 20, 3, go to 10. Close, and now I can go to 30. I can go to 20. I can go to 10. I can go to 30. I can do all that from the keyboard. And you should be noticing, because I have a 48-minute clip and a 10-second clip. When I go to 10, they both go to 10. When I go to 20, this goes to 20, but this only goes to 10 because it's only a 10-second clip. Okay, that behavior should make sense to you. Now, important thing to understand, this interactions panel, these interactions that these are programmed are saved in this file. If you go to another system, obviously you're going to have to set that up. But that's a normal thing that I do. Even before I imported clips, I would go and I would set my outputs, set up my displays, then I would go set my interactions and set my keyboard things. And if I wanted other cues for the time panel, I would do those then and set up all that. Okay, so that's a really, really handy thing that is somewhat advanced, but you will definitely use that a lot. Okay, that pretty much covers the time panel. The time panel, you can click through to things. So this is how you would go. You can even drag. Okay, I'm holding the mouse and I'm dragging. Okay, you can do that. So that's how you would go cue through clip to clip. If you're playing a long clip in rehearsal and they go, hey, wait a minute. Go back, 1840. Okay, well, I'll go back to 2230. Oh, yeah, okay. Did you see that thing? Whatever. What did they just say there? Blah, blah, blah. That's how you would do that kind of thing in the time panel. And then, of course, you've got your cues, which I am paused, okay? And the cues work as I select the cues, okay? They work in pause mode. So if a stage manager says, okay, bring up that video in Q1 and go pause it at 30 seconds. Okay, great. Bring it up, right. Pause it. Let's go to 30 seconds. Standing by, ready to go. When they give you the geo, boom, there you are. You're playing the last 30. Okay, so there's a workflow for you. That's pretty much what's going to be in the time panel. Let's talk about properties because that is a big topic. You'll see I have a layer selected and I have a clip selected. In properties, you see there are various drop-down menus. There's layer properties and there are current media properties. Okay, understand these are two different things. Layer properties affect every clip on the layer. So you'll see opacity, position, scaling, rotation. Rotation's really important. When you get that video clip that for some reason is upside down, maybe it's a demo, like say the way the speaker is here in this repair demo doesn't work and you need to flip that, you could flip that entire layer. Okay, notice this doesn't work so good, but there's ways we can get around that, and I'll show you that stuff later. But that is layer functions, okay? If I click onto this video in the second column, it too is rotated 180 because that's a layer function, all right? I'm going to set this back to 0 degrees so things now show correctly or right side up, which is different than current media, which means this highlighted clip, not this clip in this column on this layer, but this highlighted clip. You can see there is effects and you can add effects, all kinds of them, to this piece of media. So, as a for instance, that's way too bright, or the color is way too orange or green or something. You can add these kind of effects, and the ones that are available will vary based on your system, but you could add them through this to this particular clip on this layer only. So you can add those effects there. Speed, you can change the playback speed of the clip that is selected. Loop mode. This is one of the most important, all right? And that gives you infinite loop, play once and freeze on the last frame, play once and stop, which means go to black, or auto follow, which means play and get to the end and then automatically go to the next column. Okay, that is very handy when you have more complicated playlists going on. Lastly, edit selection. Okay, now this is, because I'm sure you've been wondering where this is, this brings up this panel which allows you to set in and out points. So you have a play, you have a go to, beginning and end, and then you have, I'll go to the beginning, I'll press play, I'll pause, and then you also have set in, as well as the minutes, seconds, and frames, and you can also drag, and you see at the top it shows you a clock. This is currently where your playhead is, and of course this is an audio waveform. So if you want to get right to the beginning of audio on a clip, You can drag and you can select, and then you can also say, well, I need to take off 2 frames, and you can drag this way, or I need to take 1 second off, or something like that. So these are all the ways that you can set in and out points for that clip where it is in the dashboard. So this is only this clip where it exists here. Once you have selected your in and out points, then you can close this window. Okay, and then when you play this clip, it is going to play them back from those selected in and out points.
Is this thing on?
Let's bring in the other.
Is this thing?
And notice if you don't like those in rehearsal, you can go back and you can change your in and out points for that clip. Down here, time code. If there is a time code track involved and there's time code inputs and other things here, that's where you would select that for this clip. However, that's extremely advanced in that you have to have the proper hardware and everything set up for that. But you can do some kind of time code sync, and I'm not going to get into synchronizing multiple machines. That is definitely for another video. But the last most important thing, audio volume and audio routing. Okay, audio volume is what it is. This is in percent. This is really important because you will find that as you drop clips in from various creators, you will probably find varying volume levels. And depending on the type of show and who you're working with, you may have an A1 who says, you know, all your clips are really consistent, but one is super loud or one is super soft. You can go in here and you can drag and increase or decrease your volume, or you can double click and put in a specific percentage. I'll put it back to 100, but that's how you would change the volume for that clip only, which is usually what you're going to do because you're going to have a series of clips in all of these columns, and they're going to play great, but for 1 or 2 of them, and you're going to need to go click on that clip and adjust the volume for that clip in that column. And then lastly, audio routing. This was a great thing added in version 4, I believe, and it helps you a great deal when you have multi-channel audio boxes, interfaces, and multi-channel files. It comes up because it defaults in the audio routing to the default device for the system. So you may have heard audio, maybe it's coming through the speakers and the microphone or however it's coming through, but I'm hearing, when I record this, I'm hearing those clips play back through the speakers in this Mac. The only device that I have is MacBook Pro speakers. This shows you audio inputs as well as audio outputs. The layout, this allows you to do manage layouts and do custom layouts. So for instance, maybe you're doing a bunch of stuff that's stereo, but then you have a 4-channel output for one hero video or something like that, and you have to change the audio routing. Okay, but the main thing is this shows you volume and 0 dB. As you can see, you can drag this up or down, so you can lower it from maximum. But then it shows you channel 1 in, so channel 1 off of the source goes to channel 1 out of the hardware, MacBook Pro speakers, and channel 2 goes out channel 2 of MacBook Pro speakers. So say you needed to make a stereo clip go mono out channel 1 of your device, you would say, okay, channel 1 goes out channel 1 at 100%, that's the same, and channel 2, I'm going to make that go out channel 1 of my output device at 100%. Now, you have both of these input channels going out channel 1 in mono. Beware of 2 things, of course. Number 1, since this wasn't originally mono, if these are loud, you can now overload this output because both of them are going at full volume out the same output. And you see 0 dB here. You could take these down, say 3 dB each, and then prevent that summed audio mono output from overloading. If you were doing that and you didn't want anything output 2, then you could take that down there. Another thing you could do, because these are master volumes of the sum of these going out these channels, you could also take down audio 2 here. No audio would go out. Okay, now let's just sort of confirm what's happening here. So I'm going to take this clip that we're working on, and we're working on audio routing of this current media, this clip in this column. I'm going to go here and say infinite loop. Then I'm going to start playing this column.
Let's bring in the other.
Okay.
Is this thing on?
Notice.
No.
And we see levels. Okay.
It's only going to get worse.
All right. We turn down the channel 2 audio level here, even though the input is up and it's up here in this mixer, which is essentially what this is in the middle, is a mixer.
Bring in the other.
Is this thing
Okay.
on?
There's audio, but it's not going out the master. If you were listening in my computer, I'm only hearing it out of the left side now as well. Okay, so that's how these work. And then, of course, you can say turn down audio 2. So now only audio 1 input from the source is working. This should all be making sense. Inputs, master outputs, mixer of the inputs and stuff internally. All right. Finally, look at the output level here when both of these are playing mono out the same channel at full volume.
Is this thing on?
There's no business like show.
I think, yep, there's a red peak there. Okay, so that's exactly what I was talking about. And so if I take these back and text is a little small, but that's 3 dB. And then I play, and now we look at the
Is this
sum.
thing on?
There's
I don't think we're going to get any more. Maybe there was one little red. You know, if you wanted to make sure you weren't going to get any summing distortion, you'd go down 6 dB each, and then you would be safe. Okay, that's audio routing. All right, if I had a 4-channel output device, then I could do things like, say, take 2 inputs and send them out audio 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. The odd would go out the odds, the even would go out the evens, and then I would have duplicates going out. So, for instance, I could go out to 2 separate destinations. I could go stereo in to stereo out to a mixer at front of house, as well as stereo out to a backstage mixer that was mixing the program for record or a stream or something. I could do all that with my multi-channel output interface here from this routing panel. Super powerful, and there's tons more stuff you can do with this, but know that it's there. When you have external hardware, that's where these things are going to come in. One of the most important ones to keep in mind is a lot of times when you plug in HDMI video output, the system is automatically, the computer is automatically going to want to send audio following video. It's going to want to send the audio out the HDMI. You've probably seen this all the time where a decimator's plugged in, audio says I'm not getting audio from primary computer, and you go and you look in, for instance, your system settings, system audio settings up here, and you would see that output, instead of MacBook Pro speakers, it might say HDMI or decimator or Apple TV or something like that. All right, and that's where you say, oh, okay. And if you would go up here and say none or something like that in the output, you'd say no. I want this not to go out decimator. I want this to go out MacBook Pro speakers for a physical DI, like a PC DI plugged into the headphone jack, or it might say Mac headphones, or if you had, say, a Dante device like a Avio USB, you might say Dante USB. Okay, that's where we want the audio to go. So you would select the device in Millumin, as well as make sure the channels are going where they're going. So that's a brief overview of what you can do here. There's a lot more you can do with audio routing that's really cool. But if you're not getting audio out where you think it should, then that's the thing to look at. And this is clip by clip. If you want to make sure that everything is working out a particular audio device, then you would be going to your system settings, and you could open up the sound settings. That's where you would be looking at your output, and you would pick the output device where everything would be going. No, we're not going out to that Apple TV. And you could set your master volume out and all that kind of stuff. So that would be where you're looking at everything that's going out of that computer, remembering that this audio routing is current media here. Okay? So there's a few other things mapping. We're not going to talk about that, but that's if you wanted to do specific mapping on this clip. Effects, again, if you wanted to add effects here, masks, this stuff all here is going to generally be over the whole entire canvas. You have to experiment to see what's going on, but what I will show you about the layer and things you can do with the clip is you've got handles here. Okay, notice how these, remember I said there's rotation and things, and notice how there's handles here. These are similar to like what you get in Photoshop or whatever. Okay, I need to scale this up to fill the screen. Okay, you can do that manually, and then you'll see over here that scaling was changing. Okay, however, that's in the layer panel. Let's go back here.
Let's bring in the
Okay,
Is this thing on?
and notice
No.
that's on this layer. You'll notice scaling changed here, and then as I click and hold on this down arrow, that sizes the canvas. Notice this is what happened to this first clip, native 1920 1080, when this scaling is applied to the layer in order to make this clip the right
Is this
size.
thing on?
Okay, so
No.
Let's bring in the other.
Is this thing on?
So the important thing to get about this is you'll oftentimes get multiple resolutions of clips. Everything will be 1920 1080, but some guest presenter, somebody else brings in, say, a 1280 by 720 clip or something completely different. What I usually do, because this scaling here works on the layer, is I make multiple layers for different resolutions. How would you do that? So say I wanted to make layer 1 here. This I would make my 1920 by 1080 layer and label it thusly by double clicking. And layer 2, I would make my, say, 1280 by 720 layer. And this allows me to show you one other thing that we haven't talked about here, edit board. Edit board is how you can make changes after you've dropped things in. And notice how some things are changing here. You get a few different controls and stuff. But the thing about edit board is it allows me to click and drag and move clips. Normally, if you're not in edit board mode, when you click in that, you start playing. That's what it always does, is it plays. Okay, so now by moving this clip from the 1920 1080 layer to the 1280 by 720 layer, I can then change my layer scaling to be where it needs to be. So now this is full screen here, and I'll go back to this layer and this clip,
Let's bring in the other.
which is now way too large. Take this back to 100% because it's 1920 1080, and there you can see that. Now I have full screen and different layers. So now I will just click to fit. That's what this frame means, click to fit. And now we're here and we play this. Full screen,
Is this thing on?
correct size. We go to the next
Is
one.
this thing on?
Full screen,
No.
correct. Okay. There we go. So that's one way to use the multiple layers, and that's because scaling is done at the layer level rather than at
this thing
the media level, which is where things like speed, looping, and routing and other things like that occur. One of the other reasons for using edit board is that's how you would delete a clip from a column. If I go into edit board mode, click the clip, and then hit the delete key, it deletes that clip. If you're not careful and you are not in edit board mode and you click a layer and you go delete, you can delete the entire layer even though it's locked, but you can also Apple Z undo,
All right.
as well as edit, undo, redo up here in the menu. Those work as well. So locking the layer keeps you from changing some things, but you could still do other things like delete the layer. So it's important to know how you can get back from making mistakes. Also, there's an eyeball here, and you can see if you click the eyeball,
Let's bring in the other.
now
Is this
when
thing
I
on?
play that, it's not showing this layer. So that's how you can turn off that layer and play your clips that way. Okay, turn it back on. Now when I play it, we are seeing the top layer, not the bottom layer. And a few other things that you can do when you are in edit board mode is there is a plus here, and this allows you to do some things at the layer level but automate them. One of the important ones, and of course everybody wants to know this, particularly if you are auto-following, is adding transitions, okay? And you see I clicked media transition, I added that property, I go out of edit board, and it goes away, but in edit board I see now there is a media transition property added to this layer. And if I click on double click on it, it gives me a duration and a type. So fade in and out, crossfade, this is where I could fade from one clip to another and build that in. And I could say, so we're in milliseconds. Unfortunately, you have to think in milliseconds. If you want a 30 frame transition in a 30 frame video, that would be 1 second. That's 1,000 milliseconds. So you're going to have to learn that, because I don't believe there's any place you can change the units. If there is, post a comment, let me know, but I don't think that there is. But this is where you could build in transitions into your from column to column, from media to media in a layer. Also notice edit board up here at the top, there is a column transition, okay? This is an overall transition. So everything, and notice there's 2 clips here. Normally you're probably not going to be playing 2 clips because you're going to be playing everything full screen. The reason you might use a specific layer transition is if you're doing something with different size clips and compositing things. We're not going to go into detail, but that's where you would do that. However, for the column in general, transition, smooth, linear, or manual, these are how things crossfade. And then the funny thing is this is in seconds. So if you want, a 3-second transition, you would say 3 seconds there, and this column would transition to the next column in 3 seconds. Also, remove, this is how you would delete a column if you've done a bunch of work here with clips and it's like all of that is no good or whatever. Okay, you could just remove that. And most importantly, maybe, I don't know, title. I use the title to match cue numbers. So you get a cue sheet and say we're doing show 1 and they're going 100s, and your first video is cue 101, and then your next video, so I click to the next column using these arrow keys here, and your next playback clip is going to be 110, so then I'd say 110. So I would name number, whatever my columns that way, and then you'll see up here you get, column 1, column 2, but then you get your name, so that is from the show flow. And lastly, when you're looking at these, there are notes. This is great if there's something weird about the clip, whatever, and you want to make a note for yourself that you're not going to remember, you can put that in there. You see that you add a note here, and then it shows up here. So that's great, because then as you're going through your clips, there's a note about the script, and you might say something. You might say something in that note like count out early, something like that. 5 seconds. Something like that, so that you don't necessarily have to be glancing at your show flow all the time for stuff, but it's a text note that's there for you. And that pretty much brings us to the end of what you need to know to do shows. A couple of important things that I'm going to reiterate, and that is that these are groups of cues, not a timeline. As you go column to column, here I'm hitting the space bar, groups of cues. That's the way this software works. You can play cues when you're in edit board mode. I suggest not doing that because you might make changes that you don't want to make. So we're out of edit board mode. You know how to change properties for your layers and your current media. You know how to use your audio routing. I'm going to reiterate an important thing, which is that your first thing you do is set up everything externally in your system settings for your displays and your sound, and then open Millumin. And if you do it reversed, if you go and you open Millumin and you've got stuff going and you've made changes, and then you go say, oh, wrong video res or this or that or the other thing, and then things get weird, that means close Millumin, set up your environment of your Mac, and then open Millumin back up and make changes in Millumin that you need to for the hardware setting that you have. Okay, so one thing that I did say I would talk about, but I'm only going to talk about a little bit, is timeline. All right, timeline is something that you can use for advanced editing, compositing, and things like that. I'm going to take a clip here and I'm going to drop it in my timeline. Okay, so you would drag it down into the timeline and you see it's added a clip, and you can see that you can drag, and you see that there's properties and things up here. These are all very similar to what you have, but now you have this different display. And you can add layers, you can do lots of things, you can see keyframes. This is where you're doing more complicated editing and effects and things like that. When you need it, you will know that you need it. And I recommend learning it eventually, but what this particular video is about is playing full screen content and running a show, just playing full screen videos. You will never need a timeline to be able to do that. There's a lot in here that I've just given you. Download the software, install it, play with the demo. Hook up external audio and video things. Do all this stuff before you go on show site so that you get comfortable. Get comfortable with the idea of using the cues and using interactions to map your cues to keys on your keyboard. Get used to the different ways that you can trigger playback and start and stop things. Get used to all that before you go on show site so you feel comfortable. And then if there's questions or feedback or whatever, go down into the YouTube interface here and post your questions. I do look at them and I will respond. So I hope this has been helpful, and go out there and do shows. That's why we're here.